On a single night in 2023, roughly 653,100 people in the United States were experiencing homelessness, according to the 2023 Annual Homelessness Assessment presented by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Out of these people, approximately 35,000 are veterans, 40,000 are people over the age of 64, and 25,000 are families with children. Many of these people struggle with untreated mental illness and substance abuse disorders, and lack access to affordable housing. Due to circumstances that are unique to each individual, these people face hunger, the elements, and many other dangers. As homelessness continues to rise, it's commonplace for city officials and real estate developers to include hostile architecture in order to restrict certain behaviors, according to an article written by the Neighborhood Design Center. Examples of this that you may see in your own city are metal bars placed in the middle of benches to prevent homeless people from sleeping on them, or metal spikes placed strategically along certain areas to prevent resting. On the Statue of Liberty, the words, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," are engraved in bronze to represent our nation's supposed kind, welcoming spirit. But when it comes down to it, city planners, political leaders, and government spending aimed to inconvenience the homeless suggest otherwise. The approval, funding, and implementation of hostile architecture with the intention of keeping homeless people out is not only cruel and unjust, but is un-American and a gross misuse of funds that could otherwise be used to aid the homeless. First, let's discuss a few examples of spending on hostile architecture. According to an article written by Bob Erlenbush on nationhomelessness.org, the city of Seattle spent approximately $1 million to fence Spokane Street Viaduct to prevent homeless people from seeking shelter in an otherwise unoccupied area. In the same article, Erlenbush also points out that Washington State spent $150,000 to install rocks beneath an underpass in Spokane, taking away yet another safe place to shelter. There are also forms of hostile architecture that affect the general population as well, such as New York City Metropolitan Transport Authority's implementation of leaning benches, which are slanted areas on the wall intended to lean upon instead of an actual place to sit. These are used as a measure to keep homeless people from seeking sleep in bus stops and the subway station. This project alone cost $74 million, according to Erlenbush. Instead of funneling funds into anti-homeless design, cities should consider reallocating those funds into affordable housing options, free or reduced cost clinics, and creating more access to mental health resources. In fact, there's a host of alternative options that would be more beneficial than investment in hostile architecture. Homelessness is a growing issue, as stated in a PBS article written by Jana Gravenstein, that has shown an increase every year since 2016. Despite architecture intended to exclude them, the homeless population continues to grow. These people need compassion and help, as well as access to more resources. One of the main issues regarding homeless people that I'd like to address is that many suffer from severe mental health or addiction problems. In fact, according to an article written by Mark Saldua on the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration website, 21% of homeless people reported suffering from a severe mental health disorder, and 16% have reported suffering with substance abuse disorders. These are considerable numbers, and it's important to remember that these statistics only account for those who reported their disorders. Think of how many that haven't. Most of these people also lack sufficient help finding resources. If the funds spent on hostile architecture were instead spent on making mental health care more accessible to underprivileged and disadvantaged people, many cases of homelessness may be prevented before they begin. Some may rebuttal these proposals with the idea that homeless people shouldn't be allowed to loiter in public places just because they're homeless. They may say that the homeless population is beginning to overrun certain areas in cities, and my response to this is yes, they are. Of course they are. Homelessness has been on a constant rise for the last 8 years, and these people need somewhere to go. Luckily, this is a problem that can be solved with the same strategies used to offer aid to the homeless. Both issues have the same goal: get homeless people off the street. Hostile architecture isn't a successful strategy in solving this problem, though. We know this to be true because hostile architecture is nothing new, and the homeless population continues to grow despite efforts to deter them. In fact, hostile architecture does nothing other than make people, including non-homeless people, feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. Furthermore, it creates less safe, monitored environments for people to rest in. This leads to increased crime and illness among the homeless population and forces them to migrate to new areas, simply moving the problem instead of solving it. Instead of forcing them out, city and government officials could invest money intended for the construction of hostile architecture into programs to help the homeless, such as affordable housing or mental health resources. Overall, the homeless population, consisting of veterans, elderly, and families with children, along with single individuals, face an extreme amount of adversity just trying to survive. The use of hostile architecture aimed towards the exclusion of the homeless is an unnecessary and cruel addition of struggles placed on those who are already struggling. Could you imagine having no place to go, searching for a safe place to rest, only to find dozens of metal spikes beneath the underpass you were sure would be a shelter, knowing that you can't even find refuge under a bridge, needing help but instead being shunned? Instead of using funds to build inhumane architecture, we could instead invest them into things that would offer them help. Mental health programs, affordable housing, and even shelters to present the homeless with options that aren't public places would all be a better use of money spent to exclude the homeless. The funding of anti-homeless architecture is something that is unjust and a clear indication that the homeless are viewed as vermin and not as people in need of help. Homeless people are not an infestation. They are tired, poor, huddled masses. They need affordable housing and access to mental health resources, not metal spikes installed into the ground of their only shelters. Thank you.
Thank you.